NBA free agency. Dennis Schroeder is finally off the board, onto a new team and taking a huge pay cut. We talk about it coming up right here on Fourth and Just Us. Also, quarterback Lamar Jackson remains non committal as it pertains to the COVID-19 vaccine. Will this affect his contract negotiations with the Ravens? We'll discuss all that and more coming up on Fourth and Just Us. Welcome to Fourth and Just Us. We are so happy that you are able to join us again for another show. Same day, same time, Wednesdays, 10 o'clock in the morning. You know, we are always glad to see your faces this morning alongside Kevin A.D. Anderson as well as Dr. Leonard Moore. We have so much to share with you today. Remember, if you're watching us on YouTube, make sure you click that subscribe button. If you are watching us on Facebook, go ahead and like our page over there as well. And don't forget, you can comment throughout the show because we love to hear from our viewers. Now, the views that we are sharing on the show, they are our own. They do not reflect any other entity, any other person except for ourselves. The views on this show are strictly our own.
The views of Kevin B. Anderson do not necessarily reflect the views of the Department of Defense, the Department of the Air Force, or the U.S. government.
So now that disclaimer is out the way, let's get right to it. Lots to talk about, and we even have a special guest that will be joining us later in the show, and we'll introduce her when we get to that time. But we got to talk about what happened very, very recently, like not too long ago, a few hours ago. Dennis Schroeder agreed to a 1 year $5.9 million deal with the Celtics after turning down a 4 year deal with the Lakers worth a whole lot more money, guys. A whole lot more money, worth about $80 million. Was he a winner or was he a loser as it pertains to NBA free agency? AD?
Well, it depends on who you talk to and how you feel about this. I feel one thing is that Dennis didn't feel he was going to fit in with the current Lakers. So now he had to look at where could he go. And so he has 1 year to define who he is and how well he could play. If he has a great year with the Celtics, then he can recoup that money. If he doesn't, then, it's his bad. But he's rolling the dice. And I think that either there's no telling if he's going to win or lose right now, although he is short $35 million.
More than that, like 75 million. Lericia, my question is, let's say he would have went to the Lakers this year and completely balled out and they get a ring and he would have averaged 25. How many teams would have offered him a whole lot more than the 20 million per year? So that's why I'm wondering, I mean, what could he have got? 25? And so my question is, what was his number? And, we talk about people shooting your shot and betting on yourself. And I'm not trying to get in this brother's pocket, but I think sometimes you got to recognize your value. But then again, in his defense, he may see what's the former Boston Celtic playing with Charlotte, the Bobcats now, getting 28 million. What's his name? The guy that came from Utah? Boy, his name's but anyway, he probably sees money being passed out like crazy. And he probably like, you know what, I can get maybe in the mid-20s. I think it was a bad miscalculation. We'll see if he has a bounce back year this year at Boston.
Well, one other thing is they talk about he's not good in the locker room and he's not a good teammate. So I think some of that came into it, whether it's true or not.
Yeah, and I wonder what that means. I mean, I know he's not American. I think he's from Belgium or something like that. But just wonder what the locker room dynamic was, and how does that stuff get out when they say he's not good in the locker room? He's a professional. You come to practice, go play ball, and go home. So we'll see how it all shakes out.
Again, he turned down a 4 year, $84 million deal with the Lakers and now has accepted a 1 year, $5.9 million deal with the Celtics. We shall see how that plays out, as you said, Doc. But want to stick with the Lakers and talk about it from a totally different perspective. Are they old? or are they better? We know that Carmelo Anthony signed a 1 year deal in free agency with the Lakers as well. They also picked up a few other veteran free agents, including Russell Westbrook. Now, let's think about it here. LeBron James and Carmelo Anthony both came in same year of the NBA draft in 2003, right? There's no denying the top tier talent that's on this roster. But we also have to talk about this age because right now the Lakers, they do have the oldest roster in the league. The average age on their roster, or the average Lakers roster age, is about 31.8 years, with the oldest being Carmelo Anthony at 37. So, are you guys concerned that age will play a role in the upcoming season? Will they be able to remain healthy throughout a full season, including the playoffs as well?
Of course not. I mean, they're old, they're up in age, they got a lot of miles on those tires. And here's the thing about when you get LeBron, now they got LeBron, they sacrificed their franchise and got rid of all that young talent like Ball and Randall. They got rid of all those guys for LeBron. Now LeBron got him a ring, but you're not getting a ring after that. And the funny thing is, people have to look at what happens to franchises when LeBron leaves, right? Look at what happened to Cleveland, struggling. And when LeBron leaves, LA struggling. But let me say this, and you all may disagree. I think we are witnessing the erosion of one of the greatest brands in professional sports. I used to look at the Lakers sort of like Neiman Marcus. It seemed like now they have turned into the Salvation Army, where you just go and you just pick through a bunch of stuff. And from what the experts say, they still haven't solved their main issue. They don't have any three-point shooters. So I don't know. The Lakers, to my mind, used to stand for something, but it seems now as that we just picking up players, just trying to fill a roster spot.
Hey, Doc, well, coming from LA, the brand is still strong, even when they struggle between Kobe winning the last championship and then winning it a year ago with LeBron. What the Lakers are telling you is that these players aren't going to play every game, and they're not going to have the minutes. So they're going to play to position themselves so they could get into the playoffs, and then you're going to see the minutes come. But they're not going to be able to play them day in or day out, and they're not going to be able to play them, a lot of minutes per game in order for them to stay healthy and be competitive and try to win a championship. And you're right about this. They still have to find a three-point shooter. So, I mean, this team could do really great things, or it could bomb. Now, the pressure's on the GM for him making all these moves. And so last year it didn't pan out. And so I'm thinking that he better hope that this works out for him this year.
Now, Doc, I don't know if I agree with you when you talked about the brand aspect of it. You said this is an erosion of a brand, correct?
Yeah, absolutely, Rich. Absolutely. I mean, they picked up what 6 or 7 new players a couple weeks ago, and the parks they don't even fit. That's my point. It doesn't even fit. I remember my mom; she would go to the Goodwill on Saturday morning. We were middle class black folk, but she still believed in going to that Goodwill, and she would bring home stuff. I'm like, Mom, it don't even fit. She said, but it looked nice. I thought it would look good on you. And I think with the Lakers, the pieces don't work. The pieces don't work. Can you beat Golden State 4 times out of 7? Can you beat Milwaukee 4 times out of 7? I doubt it. And what will happen if this is LeBron's last year? The franchise will be in disarray for the next 5 or 6 years because they sacrificed all their youth. And I think they sacrificed a good nucleus that they had, but they were impatient. And now you're seeing in many ways the consequences of that impatience.
Understood. Your perspective totally understood. But in the words of Carmelo Anthony, we don't care. We're going to write our own narrative. So we shall see what narrative the Lakers write as it pertains to this season, as it pertains to all of the pieces that they added, to see if they come together and if that team chemistry is present and evident as the season goes forth. Moving on now to some NFL action. The 2020 and 2021 NFL Hall of Fame enshrinement ceremonies took place over the weekend. We were able to hear from guys like Troy Polamalu, Peyton Manning, Calvin Johnson, just to name a few. Again, this was both the 2020 and the 2021 inductees. The 2020 happened on Saturday, 2021 happened on Sunday. But one of the biggest exclamation points, in my opinion, and this took place during the 2020 ceremony, was Edrin James and his speech. Now we know that the speeches were a little shorter than normal because they had to, of course, make do with time with so much that they had going on. But his speech had a lot of points in it, and a lot of things that represented his story, right? And how he ended his speech, I think, stuck with a lot of people. He said, "My career started with gold teeth and ended with this gold jacket." He also sort of referenced incarceration a little bit by saying he was forever in the NFL Hall of Fame, of course, referencing his number as people would if they were incarcerated with their that type of number. It was his story. So I'm curious to know, Doc, your thoughts on how he framed his speech and the things that he
Hey,
said.
Lericia, as we say in the black church, that brother brought a word. He had a text, he had a couple of bullet points, and he brought it home with a hoop. I mean, I think that speech was phenomenal. And I think a lot of us, particularly those of us who are a little older, Lericia, I think we struggle when it comes to giving advice to the younger generation about hairstyles. And I know, I'm not ashamed to admit it. I know I've maybe, maybe tried to convince some young brothers, hey man, you say you want to work at this firm, you say you want to go into this industry, you may have to adjust your hairstyle. And I could understand people say, oh, doc, that's a sellout move. But I think there is this idea that we battle, you know what I mean, wanting people to be able to express themselves, but also understanding the reality, Lericia, that we don't want, particularly my students when they hit the job market, we don't want somebody else's ignorance to prevent them from getting an opportunity. But I appreciate what Edrin said about, people thought that it was surprising that he had never been arrested or under a jail. And I think it's probably the best Hall of Fame speech to date.
AD?
Yeah, I agree with that. It was the best acceptance speech that I've ever heard. It was authentic. It was real. And what his message was to everybody is you can't judge a book by its cover. And, the stereotypes that he lived and he heard and he knew, it was like, this is me, this is my accomplishment, this is what I've done, even though you looked at me in a different filter and a different light. A lot of people, though, I believe, missed the message and they truly didn't understand what he was trying to convey.
Mm-hmm.
But, all the young folk that was able to listen to that and all the older folk that was able to listen to that gives you a whole different perspective on, the array of people that are playing in the NFL and how different they might carry themselves and they look. But success has no color. Success, has no marking, and that, he did a tremendous job, and I was very proud of him and being African American male of that day, hearing what he had to say.
And also, AD, success has no direct or one way story. And
Hmm.
his story, I think, is a true example for a lot of other young men who are one aspiring to do the things that he was able to do, and then ones who are also in the league right now. He also made reference to his dreads and how so many people came at him about his hairstyle, but now look at him. His hairstyle that so many people hated or talked about is actually a statue that's going to be in the NFL Hall of Fame. So I thought it was very authentic. I thought it represented who he is, what he stands for, and it was just 100% him. And you can't take that away from him. You can't change his story. You can't change the things that he experienced, the stereotypes that were thrown his way, and things that were said about him. And so I think it was a learning lesson. And I also agree with you too, AD, that a lot of people did miss the message that he was trying to portray. But I think if you go back and you listen to what is said, then you'll understand. He was just giving you an example of what he went through during his years in the NFL. So I like the speech, and
Yeah.
I commend him for the things that he said, for sure.
Well, the other thing that has concerned, or I'll even use bothered me, is many people said, I didn't know he was that articulate. Well, again, they were stereotyping him like just because he had dreads and he had gold teeth and whatever that, he couldn't speak. So there's a lot of things that were really great about that, and I just wish more people could grasp and understand the message.
What I'm also proud of is that, he knew he had a platform and he
Yes.
used it, right? He used
Yes.
it to share a message. He used it to speak on behalf of the community. And then when you contrast what he said with some of this nonsense, Lericia's future Senator Herschel Walker says when he has a platform, it's like, come on, man. And so I'm proud of Edrin because it is easy to get up there and to have a platform like that and just to, in many ways, cower, or just to say, give something soft. But no, he gave a political speech, and a political speech was needed at that time.
Understood. So again, if you have not had the opportunity to watch his acceptance speech, we highly recommend that you go watch it. I'm pretty sure you can find it on YouTube, Facebook, wherever you would like to go and search for it. Moving on now to the 2020 Tokyo Olympics. We have to talk about it and round out our discussion because we have been keeping up with the Olympics and everything that has taken place this year with it. And one aspect of this conversation, and I'm really excited to talk about it, is the fact that the U.S. women dominated the medals. 60% of U.S. medals were won by women in sports including fencing, gymnastics, shooting, swimming, track and field, water polo, wrestling, and there was plenty more. But of the team USA's 113 medals at these games, 66 were won by women, 41 were won by men. And of course, six of the medals that were won were in mixed events that featured both male and female athletes. But this is a trend that we've seen for the past few Olympics. The increase in women participation, also the increase in women actually dominating the medal count. So when you hear of these statistics and you see these trends, what statement are women making, Doc?
I think it's a testament to the investment America has made in sports for girls. Although we have a long way to go in terms of gender equity in sport. I think over the last 30 years, the investment has been unparalleled, and I think we invest more in youth sports for girls than any other country on the globe. So I think now that investment started about 30 years ago, and I think now you're starting to see the maturation of that, where these women who've been competing at a high level for a long time, will continue to dominate on the world stage.
And
Well,
Andy,
I
let
think
me
it
say
sends the
this.
message too that
Go ahead.
Title IX has an effect, and the men need to step up their game. The women still dominated track, but you look at the men and how we've slipped in track, and track was one of the things that we usually could count on that we were going to medal on both sides. And I think if you look at it, it was on the track and in the swimming pool where we won the majority of our medals. Here's the thing that we're looking at now. We're looking at the way collegiate athletics is going, and that we see all these programs being cut. The United States citizens need to look at this, because if we continue to cut those sports, who's going to train the future Olympians? If you look at the statistics, most of our Olympians come directly from college or are still in college. So, I mean, there's a lot of things when we look at this whole thing that is gravitated around football and all the other revenue sports, but you can't host an Olympic team without having intercollegiate sports at its highest level. And the U.S. government is not going to do like these other countries and fund the Olympic team.
Yeah.
And let me say this too, that this was the fourth consecutive Summer Olympics in which U.S. women won more medals than U.S. men. And it is the third consecutive Summer Games in which women outnumbered men on the U.S. team. Like you said, AD, I think this does, we have to give credit to Title IX for playing a huge role in empowering women and basically opening that floodgate of participation for women to be a part of these games. And also, like you said, Doc, we still have a ways to go as it pertains
Mhm.
to equality within sport. And I think this is just one way to show an example of it's happening. And if we continue to support and uplift and put, our monies and investments behind women in sports, anything is possible and anything can happen, because this is a true example of what could take place. And one person who actually echoed those sentiments was Allison Felix, who is now the most decorated U.S. Olympic track athlete ever. She won her 10th and 11th Olympic medals last week in Tokyo. And I think it was truly an honor to watch her, especially after she was able to connect back with her young daughter, because she talked about those medals and what it represented for her journey. She said that these medals were proof to her that she could break through some of those things that she dealt with, about one point not having a sponsor, or one point not knowing if she would ever get back into track and field shape, and not knowing if she would ever even just truly compete again.
Yeah.
So when you heard about Allison Felix's accomplishments and her sharing her journey, what were your thoughts?
I'm happy for, I think all those medals, most people don't realize the Olympics is every 4 years. She has been in the game a long time. And so the question will be, how will she be remembered? You know what I mean? She had longevity, but, somebody like Wilma Rudolph and Flo Jo, did a lot during one specific Olympics. So it's interesting to see how she will be remembered. Sometimes people who've been performing in front of us for a long time, Lericia, we don't really appreciate in many ways their greatness until after they are long gone. So let's give that sister her flowers while she's here.
Well, let's face it, she's a phenomenal athlete. And for her to have that kind of longevity and that kind of success, and to win 11 gold medals or 11 medals, and take out Carl Lewis, who, was the medal holder of 10 medals. So, she's done a phenomenal job. And, if you look at it in another world, she would have all kind of endorsements and sponsorships.
Right.
So we'll see if that happens in the near future for her.
Right.
Another woman who made a statement this year as well, one of many, right? One of many. Dawn Staley winning her first medal as a head coach for being the head coach of the women's basketball team. She's won 3 as a player, 2 as an assistant coach. And after addressing the media after winning this gold medal as a head coach, she let it be known that she would not continue on as a head coach of the U.S. women's basketball team. Now, with this going, of course, we've had this discussion. We've even talked to her about it, right? And her potential of moving on to a different level. Like, what would be next for Dawn Staley? Could the NBA be a potential step for her? And when you think about her chances or opportunities of being an NBA coach, what do you think or feel, AD?
Well, she's already proven herself at every level as a player and as a coach. She's won everywhere. I think the next accomplishment that she will achieve, if they give her the opportunity, is to be an NBA coach. But not only that, she will be an NBA champion. She can relate, and she could get anybody to play it and motivate them. So, I look forward for the NBA to make her the first women's coach in the game.
I think, one reason she may be giving up the Olympic team is not a challenge. Basketball is a sport invented by Americans. We should dominate. And I think she's someone who is built, for challenge, right? I don't think it's fun for her, blowing these teams out by 20 and 30 points. And if we're honest, they could have brought 13 or 14 other sisters on that brand new sisters on that Olympic team, and they would have won it as well, But here's one thing I would like to see with the Olympic team, and this may be controversial, Lericia, but I'm going to say it. We've been seeing Sue Bird and Diana Taurasi for a long time. We really need to get some new blood in there, because I think there are some dynamic sisters who came out of college the last 3 or 4 years. And, I kind of want to see them play in their prime. And I just think the Sue Bird, Diana Taurasi piece, I think their long-term presence on the Olympic team, really has prevented some new sisters getting an opportunity to play, who, quite frankly, could bring more of a fan base to the game.
So you think
Well,
there are
hey,
younger
Doc, the argument
players?
there, though, is if we could go back and we talked about Allison Felix and people could feel the same way about her. So, I think what the true sense of what everybody wants is that gold medal. And as long as they're able to be on a team to provide that gold medal, they're going to be on the team.
Yeah, but if you
And
already got
they
two,
look
if you already got two rings, come on, two medals? Can we get some other? Because the point is, Sue Bird and Tarazi, they don't cause people. They don't. People don't say, "Oh, I'm going to watch them play." No, because
You
we've
don't
seen them for so long.
you don't think
And
people still want to see Sue Bird and Tarazi play?
Yeah, I agree with you,
I
Lericia.
don't.
Because I'm still one of those people who are absolutely amazed at what they do on the court and how well they've done it for so long. So I'm not going to sit here and say like, "Oh, I don't want to still see them play." No, I still
I'm
do.
not
So
saying
I
they
don't
can't.
know.
I'm not saying they can't compete, but we have to be honest. If we're trying to generate more interest in women's basketball, what was exciting about the NCAA, you had all these young dynamic sisters playing, all these young dynamic personalities, and it was exciting. That's why the ratings were through the roof. But at the Olympic team, we don't have those stories anymore because they've been we're familiar with them. That's all I'm trying to say is that we're familiar
We
with
were
those stories, and I think some younger players being on the team could bring more attraction to the game.
we were familiar with a lot of people, including Allison Felix, Katie Ledecky, and the men that's on the USA basketball team. So if you're going to use that, it has to be applicable
Hey,
across the board.
Lericia, my suggestion on the men's side: use college players. I've always said that. Use college players. I think it will be more exciting.
So, Doc, what's more important to the American society, winning or having given somebody an opportunity? Because the
Okay,
reason why we don't have
look at the
professionals,
ratings.
we
Look at
don't
the
have
ratings
college
for the
players
Olympics
now
this
is
year.
because all those other countries were beating us. Even when we had the pro team, and it was a pro team this year, I mean, we struggled, and particularly initially in those games. So the question is it about the gold or is it about opportunity?
It's
Kevin,
about
when
the
you were
gold
athletic
medal.
director at Maryland, and when your men's basketball team played Eastern Shore or Howard or at Morgan State, you knew it was going to be a blowout. You knew it. There's no fun attending those games. You knew and you're going to have to give them a check at the end of the game. Weren't the games against like Michigan and Ohio State and maybe Duke and Georgetown, weren't those games more exciting? My point is, if you already know the outcome of the game before it starts, what's the incentive to sit and watch? There is none. And that's why the ratings, particularly for women's and men's basketball in the Olympics, were horrible because we already know the outcome.
Well,
But
I
can we
believe that when the
necessarily?
U.S. women played Nigeria, they were at least in it for a half, and they played well. So, Doc, I disagree with you, and I think that the format now is what it's going to be, and those players still contributed. So I don't think that's going to happen.
I
Now, here's
disagree
the way
too,
we
Doc.
can't
I
do, and you
disagree
said
too.
this, Doc, is that you just make it amateur again, and that you let the college kids play, and you can't have any professionals, and that's the only way you're going to get to where
Yeah.
you are now. So, but the genie's out of the bottle.
Oh, I understand that. I understand that. Larisha, you're going to say something.
I was saying I disagree too, and I was agreeing with what AD said. Because when the women played Nigeria, that was a good game. And I
Great
was
game.
all the way in it. And also, you can say the same for when the men played France and got their butt whooped. And also the other games that they lost as well. So I was just saying that I agree with AD on his statement. I had to disagree with you there when you were
Larisha, I
making the
feel you on the women in
reference.
Nigeria and the men against France. Were the games ever in doubt, though? We knew when the Olympics started, the men and the women were going to win gold. We knew it. We knew it.
Well, no,
We knew it was
when
going
we
to happen.
No,
played those two exhibition
no,
games, the men did. People were wondering, and then we went and lost that game, and everybody was saying, "Ooh, these guys aren't going to win." And
right.
they were talking bad about him. They talked about bad about KD, and then after they won, he got very little recognition. Because he scored the most points out of anybody, but he didn't get recognized the way he should have. So I think that Doc, we don't agree on this one.
Go look at the ratings. Just go look at the ratings. Go look at the ratings.
But hey, I don't watch because of the ratings. I watch because I like the sport. So
Thank
Did you?
you, AD.
Okay.
Thank you.
Question for both of y'all: did you all sit down and watch a complete game from beginning to end for the men or the women?
Yes.
yes,
Yes.
All right.
yes, yes.
I sat down and watched a complete game. I sat down and watched several of the track meets. I sat down and watched all of the swimming competition, all of
Yeah.
the
Right.
gymnastics competition. I even watched an entire water polo match.
Because there's suspense there. There's suspense. You don't know who's gonna win. But when the man and the woman play, you know who's gonna win.
I don't know. We all might have to agree to disagree on this topic
Absolutely.
and put a pin
Absolutely.
in it because our
On
special
that.
guest is in the building and we want to actually bring her in for this conversation that we are now about to have as it pertains to NFL athletes and COVID as well as the vaccine. So we know that a person now who has been in the news about all of this stuff, Lamar Jackson, the Ravens quarterback, has been non-committal on the vaccine after his second COVID bout. Right? We know that last November he tested positive for COVID, had to miss one game, but at the start of training camp tested positive again. But this time had to miss 10 days, and that's according to the new rules for unvaccinated players. And when he was asked about whether or not he would receive the vaccine, he said that he was still going to, or still needed to talk to team doctors, still needed to talk to his family, in essence, saying that this is a personal decision. So he has not made a commitment to getting the vaccine itself. And so the question that is here is, will this affect contract negotiations that he's having right now with the Ravens? Because while he was out with COVID this second time, we saw a fellow quarterback who was in his same draft class, the Buffalo Bills QB Josh Allen, receive a huge contract extension. He actually agreed to I believe, 6 year extension that runs through 2028, worth $258 million, including $150 million guaranteed. Doc, is this going to affect Lamar Jackson and his contract, his ongoing contract negotiations with the Ravens? Meaning also this contract that we saw with Josh Allen, as well as his commitment or lack of to receive the vaccination.
No, Lamar Jackson, I would say, the after Aaron, I would say he's probably the best quarterback in the NFL. He's the franchise. He's the face of the Ravens, beloved in Baltimore. I don't think it'll affect his contract negotiations. And let me say this about the folks like Lamar who are skeptical of the vaccine. I understand people's skepticism when they say, well, it's still kind of new and we're not sure of all the side effects. I understand that. What I don't understand is some of the conspiracy theory nonsense that is also floating around out there. No, I think Lamar will get his money, and I think he'll be, when he signs his contract, I think his contract will exceed Josh Allen's, and he'll be the highest player in the NFL because he has deserved it. As Stephen A. Smith says, he's box office, and he single-handedly can change can change football games at the drop of a dime.
He's truly a superstar, but the proof will be in the pudding. One, if he had COVID again and the Baltimore Ravens couldn't play because of the protocols, I think that would be an issue. I think the other thing is, and people always talk about this, is that he's got to the playoffs, but can he win the playoffs? So there's a lot of things and dynamics that could go into this. Although I think that you have to base on what he's done now that, he is truly a great quarterback. But, one thing that I think is in question is he a team player? And him not being vaccinated exposes the entire team to getting COVID and to losing money. Because if you forfeit a game, everybody doesn't get paid. So those are some of the questions. And, does he have the locker room? And is he splitting the locker room now because he won't get vaccinated? Because I believe the majority, if not all of the other players are vaccinated. So those are some of the questions that will come into play.
The Ravens did enter into training camp with that 90% vaccination rate as it pertains to their roster. But I want us to bring in now a special guest who can also add to this conversation with her knowledge around this particular issue here as it pertains to the vaccination and COVID. We have Dr. Melissa Clark, aka Dr. Mel. She is a
Dr. Bell.
co-founder of the
Doc.
Black Coalition Against COVID-19. Doc, thank you for joining us. We greatly appreciate you being on the show.
I am so happy to be here. Hi, Doc. Hi, Lericia. Hi, Kevin. It's a pleasure.
So
Thanks, Doc.
want to bring you in on this conversation. And AD actually made the point here. We're talking about Lamar Jackson and his commitment or lack thereof to receive the COVID-19 vaccination. And AD made the point of him not being a team player or potentially being looked at as not being a team player because he has not said yay or nay to receiving the vaccine. He left it as it's a personal decision that he's not going to dwell on. Do you have this same perspective or do you view this the same?
No, absolutely not. You know, it's really clear that this football analogy is actually a great analogy for society because it is not a personal decision. Him not getting vaccinated could potentially, if he tests positive and spreads it to other teammates, the other 10% that aren't vaccinated, it could affect their pocketbooks. It could affect the fans' viewing pleasure. It could affect the owners' pocketbooks. And so his individual decision affects many. And it's the same for the rest of society. I have been saying, don't worry about herd immunity for the country. Worry about herd immunity for your tribe, for the people that you're around the most, whether it's your football team, whether it's your family, whether it's your coworkers, because you could be, number one, the source of giving them the coronavirus, or you could be the source of a new, more dangerous variant that could pop up if you get infected with the current strain of the coronavirus. So, no, I absolutely don't agree with that.
So I'm assuming because you mentioned, him, that potential hurting the pocketbooks of owners and also others on the team, that they will look at this potentially in contract negotiations for him right now.
You know, that's certainly a possibility. I mean, I understand his star attraction and all that, but if he's going to cause the team to miss games, it's really something that they're going to need to weigh very carefully.
Well, Dr. Miller, I have a question for you.
Dr. Clark.
Did, did,
Either is fine. Either is absolutely fine.
oh, I
Oh,
go
my bad.
back.
My bad. Oh, my bad. I thought you said Dr. Moore. My bad.
No. I'm sorry. My dentures, I need to tighten them up a little bit. I didn't use a poly dent today.
I understood you.
Hey, Dr.
Okay.
Miller, the Ravens have an excellent medical staff. So they're providing him and the team all the information. And you and I have been able to sit down and talk about this as well. Give me your opinion on what kind of advice is he getting, and if he's getting the right advice, why do you think he's not getting vaccinated?
Well, I read the statement that he made, which was that, he had to talk to the team doctors about it. And I just find it really hard to believe that that the team doctors have not been proactive in talking with the entire team about the decision to vaccinate. If they haven't to this point in the pandemic, after 8 months of availability of a vaccine, 4 months for the general public, that's really tantamount to malpractice. I just really can't believe that they have not had that conversation yet. And I have no idea what his reasons are. I know what some of the common reasons are. One is that it's a personal decision. Why are you worried about my particular body? But of course, that's not the issue. It's a community decision because it's public health, not private health. The other thing is a lot of people say, well, I'm healthy. I'm at the top of my game and I don't know how it's going to affect my athletic performance. Well, he has 90% of the rest of his team to see that it has not affected their athletic performance. And furthermore, when you are healthy, it doesn't mean that you can't get infected and spread it to other people, even if you do fine. And it's also like playing Russian roulette with this Delta variant, because this Delta variant is more harmful to young people, even if they're healthy. 9% of the people hospitalized now, 2% in the ICU, are perfectly healthy. They have no underlying health conditions. So whatever his reason is, I would love to have a conversation with him if he hasn't yet had that with his team doctors, and help him come to a different decision.
Somebody get
So
Dr.
Lamar,
Mel
I'm
on the
sorry,
phone
but
with
Lamar,
Lamar.
if you're watching, call Dr. Mel.
Yes, somebody get Dr. Mel on the phone with Lamar Jackson right away, people. Right
Or
away.
Dr. Clark, just go to the facility.
Right, right.
Wait for so Dr. Clark, let me ask you this. As a black physician, how do we deal with this issue, this anti-vax mentality in the black community, where a lot of young people, they see it as a badge of wokeness, that they
Yes.
aren't getting any of the vaccine. We love to talk about Trump supporters not getting it. We love to bash
Right.
them. But when I hear these, I mean, me and my son, he had to get a physical the other day for football. So we go to this urgent care facility. There's an African-American female nurse, and she told me she's not getting the vaccine. And her response was, well, I had it back in January and I didn't really get sick. But I think she's part of this crowd where it's sort of a
Yeah.
badge of wokeness. It's pushing back up against white supremacy. How do you respond to those comments when you hear them coming from our folks?
Yeah, and I just would point out to that nurse that 96% of doctors surveyed have gotten vaccinated. Just want to point that out.
Yeah.
I understand where it comes from. I understand that we as Black people have borne the brunt of being victimized and abused at times by the medical research and healthcare delivery system. On my show, Excuse Me, Doctor, we did a whole segment about Tuskegee, the study that happened at Tuskegee, the descendants who are now saying, look, don't use that as an excuse
Right.
to not get vaccinated, because that was treatment being withheld from
Right.
Black people. And now treatment is being, or prevention from coronavirus is being offered worldwide to people. This is not an issue of Black and white. This is an issue of a universal worldwide way to come out positive on the other side of this pandemic. And so I think it's just really important that we recognize that the information that has been pumped out to us in the Black community as far as the harms of vaccines are all based on lies, are not meant to do us well. They're actually being weaponized to take advantage of our trauma and our mistrust.
Yeah.
And what the end result is more people die of the coronavirus. More Black people die of the coronavirus. We're already dying at 3 times the rate of white people. And I think people are looking around and seeing that this Delta variant is so much more infectious. And so the good news is that Black people in the past 2 weeks have gotten vaccinated at a higher rate than white people. So have Hispanics. So we're 12% of the population. We're 15% of the people getting vaccinated. Latinos are 17% of the population, 25% of the people getting vaccinated. So the news is getting out there. I'm hoping that we're turning the curve. I know that there's some people who are dug in, and I would just say to them, reevaluate your stance, because this is not about white supremacy. This is about public health and saving Black lives.
Thanks, Doc.
Understood. Dr. Mel, when I was on your show on Monday, and again, thank you for having me on your show, you had a great interview with another doctor where you all really broke down this particular the vaccination, and you talked about well, you used the reference of the Uber driver and taking the Uber driver taking you to an apartment and not getting in there, and it was all in reference to some of the myths that people had as it pertained to the potential vaccine kind of touching or tapping into your DNA. Could you break that down again so people can understand that that's not likely?
Absolutely. And let me say, you were a fantastic guest, Lericia. We talked about should pregnant women get vaccinated, and Lericia shared her story with us. And what she's referring to is the concern that people have that the coronavirus vaccine that the vaccines will affect their DNA. And first of all, it's important to understand that the genetic material that's in that, let me even take a step further back, that the purpose of vaccines are a harmless way to expose your body to something that might be harmful in a harmless way, so that you will now have an antibody response, so that when you do come up against the actual virus, that you'll be prepared, okay, no matter how healthy you are. And It uses genetic material, messenger RNA, which are just the blueprints for how to make a specific portion of the virus, the spike protein. And it encoats that, it puts a protective shield around it so it doesn't get immediately destroyed in once it enters your body. And that shield is made up of fats, sugar, and salt, essentially. So it's like a droplet. And once it enters your body, that disintegrates that outer layer so that the messenger RNA now goes to your cell, and copies are made of the spike protein. Your body responds to that. They say, hey, wait a minute, this isn't supposed to be here. They make antibodies, and then that's the whole purpose. So the whole concept about the Uber driver was the Uber is the fat droplet, and it's carrying the messenger RNA into a certain part of town where your apartment building is. The apartment building is your cell. The messenger RNA goes into the apartment building, but it can't get into your individual apartment, which is the section of the cell where your DNA is, which is under lock and key. Nothing can get in there unless the cell lets it. And so your messenger RNA, the messenger RNA from the vaccine is stuck in the apartment lobby. And then furthermore, after about 20 minutes, it gets destroyed. So building security comes and takes it out and beats it up and destroys it. So there's no way that it can actually affect your DNA.
Hey, Dr. Mel, thank you for breaking it down on the second part, because the first part was a little bit heavy for me.
No worries. That's what I do.
And you do
Dr.
it well.
Clark, let me ask you a question. Have you found, in dealing with Black men and Black women, is there like do Black women have reasons why they aren't taking it versus Black men, or is it all pretty much the same?
No, I do find a slight difference. I think Black women are more concerned about future fertility and pregnancy. And I think, and I might be reading into this, but I think it's a real thing. I think Black men and some Black women are concerned about their autonomy. We as Black people live in a society where we constantly feel that we don't have the say over our own destiny because of the forces around us and racism and very legitimate concerns. And so we've drawn the line in the sand with this vaccine, saying it's my body. I have a right to decide about my body because I feel like I don't have control over other stuff in my life. And I just say it's the wrong place to draw the line in the sand, because you're hurting yourself and you're hurting those around you when you make that the line. It's really not about that at all.
Okay. Hey, Dr. Mel, you're absolutely right. And, we watch the news at night and we see these people that weren't vaccinated. They're in the hospital now. And then they say, I wish I would have got the vaccination. By that time, either you're dead or you're in that state. And I mean, it's just a matter of how we can't get that message across is unbelievable.
Yeah. And like I said, I think it's such a part of our identity, just as Doc said, of Black people and of being conscious. And people it's been weaponized. That's the only word I can say, weaponized to make us feel that it is a racial issue or it's an issue of autonomy. And it's really not about that at all. And we have a friend in the hospital right now who felt that way and who unfortunately is having more and more difficulty breathing every day and may end up on a ventilator. And it's, now is not the time to get the vaccine. I want to put in a plug for monoclonal antibodies, that if anybody gets who's unvaccinated, who gets COVID-19 and you're in a high risk group, meaning you have an underlying health condition or you're over 65, ask for monoclonal antibodies. That is a treatment that is highly effective. It's what Trump got, and it helps people 81% of the time stay out of the hospital if they're unvaccinated. So make sure you ask for that.
Dr. Mel, I want to give you the opportunity, of course, to spread the word a little bit about the Black Coalition Against COVID-19 and some of the things that you all are able to do within that. Would you mind elaborating?
Absolutely. So The Black Coalition Against COVID-19, BCAC, it's a grassroots organization we formed in April of 2020. I'm one of the co-founders. It started in the DC metropolitan area. It's a group of community leaders who are from across the spectrum: clergy, labor, academicians, public health folks, young people, musicians, media and people, who said, we're going to work with our Black community to make sure that they get the messages from the people that they trust in the way that they want to hear it. And so we've been doing that now, like I said, for over 15 months. We've had mass video competitions where young people submit video vignettes about why they mask up. We're doing it now for vaccines. We've done multiple national webinars that have included all the public health leaders that you know about. We've also educated clergy about how to talk to their constituents. We've educated barbers and stylists about how to talk to their clients. So we've really taken a multi-pronged approach. And actually right now, one of our colleagues, Dr. Reed Tuckson, is in talks with the National Football Players Association to talk with players about getting vaccinated. So that's a pretty timely topic for this show.
Dr. Clark, let me give you a shout out. I mean, I love the coalition, and the institution building is what I love. You know, I remind my students that pretty much all of our institutions in the Black community that are still here were created during Jim Crow, right? All of the major Black church denominations, the 8 major African-American fraternities and sororities, all of our HBCUs, all of our Black professional associations, the National Medical Association, the National Bar Association. And so what I'm proud is that what you're saying, it ain't about how many followers you got or being an influencer. Mm-hmm. And I tell young people all the time, we got to have the institution, because the institution will outlive you. And so much of what we have now, Dr. Clark, are things invested in a single individual. So let us know how we can support that coalition. We need help in the state of Texas. Our governor, please pray for him. No mask, no vaccine mandate, but he sent something out the other day asking healthcare practitioners from other states to come to Texas and help. And then he asked local hospitals to forego all elective surgeries because of the COVID surge. And so it's hypocrisy at its finest. So please come to Texas, and we can have an audience in Houston, Dallas, Austin, San Antonio ready to go, because we are suffering down here.
Well, we'd be happy to do that. We're all about institution building, as you said. The 4 historically Black colleges and universities that have medical schools are part of our consortium, as is the Urban League, and several academic institutions across the country. So, you know, we're all about that. Our very next webinar that we're going to be doing is about for incarcerated persons, about how to protect themselves against COVID, and also about answering their questions about vaccinations. We're happy to work with any institutions in Texas that want to partner with us to get the message out to the Black community, especially in the South, where vaccination rates are low and are getting slammed right now with this Delta variant. And it's just crazy, because we're back where we were almost in December, when they were closing hospitals for elective surgeries. Hospitals are being overwhelmed. There are more children in the hospital now than at any point in the pandemic. Wow. I mean, it's just hard to stomach. So yeah, we would be happy to partner with anybody to get the message out.
Dr. Clark, before we let you go here, just want to give you an opportunity to let people know how they can watch your show, and also get in contact with the Black Coalition Against COVID-19.
So I'll take the last one first. To get in touch with Black Coalition Against COVID, just go to our website, bcac.org, or blackcoalitionagainstcovid.org. And to watch my show, it's called Excuse Me, Doctor. And it comes on every Monday night, 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific. It streams on my YouTube and Facebook channel, which is Dr. Melissa Clark. And it also streams on blackdoctor.org, so you can catch it at either place. Would love if y'all stop by and check us out. you can just hit like on Facebook and subscribe on YouTube.
Awesome. Dr. Melissa Clark, who is a co-founder of Black Coalition Against COVID-19. We thank you for joining us and sharing all of your insight, your knowledge, your expertise. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much for
Thanks,
having me.
Doc.
And
Thanks,
everyone
Doc.
be safe out there.
Yes, ma'am. Again, that was Dr. Melissa Clark, aka Dr. Mel, who is the co-founder of the Black Coalition Against COVID-19. Great conversation with her. I'm pretty sure we probably could have continued and went on deeper with that conversation. But it's time for us to give our final thoughts as we wrap up today's show. So, AD, let's start with you. What are your final thoughts?
So rest in peace, J.R. Richards, former pitcher for the Houston Astros. If he was pitching in this day and time, they wouldn't be digging in, or they wouldn't be crowding the plate, because JR brought it. You know, he was in the hundreds with his fastball. He didn't always know where it was going, but tremendous person and athlete. So may he rest in peace.
Doc?
Yeah, I want to give a shout out to Sonya Richards Ross. Many of us know her as Olympic star. She's also a mother, also a wife, also a graduate University of Texas at Austin. But this past month, she added something else to her title, and that was announcing for the track and field portion of the 2020 Olympics. Sonya did a phenomenal job. And, just listening to her kind of give an insider's view on, what happens when a person is, running in lane 6 versus lane 4. And she was phenomenal. So I really look forward to maybe this being her jumpstart into doing more, into more hosting and particularly tracking field events. So shout out to Sonya Richards Ross.
And my final thoughts, I don't really have a lot except for I'm getting hungry now, guys. So thank you all for joining us and watching us. We hope that you will come back again next week, same place, same time, right here on YouTube and Facebook. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel on YouTube and like us if you are watching on Facebook. And of course, we always want to hear from you. So leave your comments and also drop your questions. And if there is anything that you want us to talk about specifically, whatever topic, please let us know. And we'll look at making sure we address that topic. So we hope that you enjoyed the show today. We hope that you enjoyed our guests. Again, we had Dr. Melissa Clark, aka Dr. Mel, join us to talk about COVID-19 concerns. She is a co-founder of the Black Coalition Against COVID-19. We thank her for her presence. And once again, we thank you for joining us on Fourth and Just Us. And we hope to see you next week for the conversation that intersects race, politics, and sports.